This is CBSE Class 10 Social Science. Most important questions for board exams, and these are based on the number of times the question have repeated in the board exams. The Ho Chi Minh Trail became advantageous to Vietnamese in the war against the United States. Support the statement with arguments. So this has come multiple times. First, let me show you the path we are discussing or trail we are discussing. So this is the path we are interested in, right? This is the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Vietnam. So what happened here? Ho Chi Minh Trail, this was a network of roads and footpaths, and most of the trail was in Lao. It's actually Laos, but we call it as Lao, and Cambodia. It was used by the Vietnamese in their war against the United States or US forces. This trail was used to transport goods and people from North Vietnam to South Vietnam, and this was used for the quick movement of forces from one war front to another war front. And this was the basic route employed to supply food, arms, ammunitions to the soldiers. It had support bases and also the hospitals on the way. So Vietnamese made use of their limited resources in an effective way in the struggle against the imperialistic forces. Ho Chi Minh Trail is an example for that. Since this trail or this path was only known, it was quite, you can say secluded or you can say covered. So this was not, the US forces were not used to this kind of path moving around, and they are not also well versed with this area. So these people were knowing this area and they know how this work. That is why they were over to overcome the strong forces like United States soldiers and forces here. Suggest any 3 steps to minimize the environmental degradation caused by the industrial development in India. So this is also coming multiple times. See, this is the problems we are having because of the industrial pollution. See, every country needs industries because this is the basic secondary sector. We need industry for the economy, we need them for the employment. There are so many things, these industries are important for us. But once the industries are being established, they pollute. And since they pollute, they degrade the environment. And this environment is where we live. So they cause air pollution, they cause water pollution, they cause soil degradation. Soil degradation means the soil is now not fertile because of these wastes, mostly the toxic waste, and of course the noise pollution. So there are certain ways or steps to minimize this environmental degradation caused by the industrial development in India, or you can say any developing country. First is minimizing the use of water for procuring, or you can say reusing and recycling it. That is, water is used everywhere. All of the industries, they use this water. Now this water is once used, if this is an industry, the once water is used, it is just being thrown out, right, without being treated. So if this water is treated again and again, like it can be reused and recycled, then there are no number of ways or successive stages this can be used, rather than just sending them at some outlet, throwing them in the stream or the river. And especially the hot water, there are certain thermal plants, etc., who are actually sending or leaving this water to the aquatic environment, and this water is so hot that the aquatic animals, aquatic flora and fauna could not prosper. So first is minimizing the water, recycling and reusing it. Second is harvesting of rainwater can be done to meet the water requirement. So there are certain ways of harvesting the rainwater, that is the rooftop also, and there are certain way. So water is important. And then the treating hot water and effluent before releasing them in rivers and ponds. That's what I was talking about. That there are certain industries which actually send or throw it to the aquatic area. That is, it can be a dump, it can be a stream or a pond or a lake, but the hot water, it spoils the environment, aquatic environment. And there are other ways also to minimize the environmental degradation, that is the waste, the toxic waste which are coming out of the industries should be treated. It should be treated, and the regulation, the industries should follow the strict regulations and rules of the government, that how or what waste are allowed to be thrown away, and if it is toxic they have to be treated properly. And then the third thing is that the industries should do something to stop all these kind of pollution, whether it be noise pollution or air pollution. This air pollution can be minimized so that there can be filter somewhere here. So all the sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, because the carbon dioxide is increasing the earth temperature, creating the greenhouse effect. So all these things can be done. So there are multiple ways you can answer. Which three challenges do you feel are being faced by political parties in India? Give your opinion. So political parties of India, as I said, we have major right now the BJP, the topmost party, Indian National Congress, then we have Samajwadi Party, TMC, the AIADMK, and DMK, like this. There are so many parties we have, CPI, now, to name a few. Now, what is the thing, or what are the scenario inside the political parties, or you can say challenges or situation? Now, first of all is the lack of internal democracy. The parties, the political parties, they don't have internal democracy by themselves. Since India is a democracy, but these parties don't have internal democracies. What does that mean? All over the world, there is a tendency of political parties towards the concentration of power in one or few leaders of the top. That is, only one or two or few leaders are only known, people know them, and the parties is revolving around them only. There is no democracy. They are the, you can say, sole decision maker, and sole, they are actually, the party is proprietary to them. Parties do not keep membership registered. They don't have any membership register like this number of people are working for us, like that. They do not conduct internal elections regularly. That is, those people who are at the top, who are, or their bhai bhatijas, their relatives, etc., they always win the election, or they don't have election, they are already nominated, like the general secretary, like the treasurer, etc. Ordinary members of the party do not have sufficient information as to what happens inside the party. See, there is a political head here. Now, there are people who are called karyakartas. They are working for them, but they are just working. Whatever is going on with them here, what are decision making, what are the political party policies, these people are not knowing it, and they are not being told at all. Second thing which comes is the no transparency, that is opaqueness, no transparency. That means what? Since the political parties, most political parties do not practice open and transparent procedure for their functioning. They do it the way they want, or their leaders, whatever they want. So these are very few ways. There are very few ways for an ordinary worker to rise to the top in the party. Means only those people, those party members who have some connections, or who are from the party leaders itself, from the family, they rise to that top position. Otherwise, the karyakartas will remain karyakartas. Those who happen to be the leaders are in a position of unfair advantage of famous people close to them, or even their family member. That is, the leaders, they only take care of their connections and those people who are working for them, like vicinity. In many parties, the top position are always controlled by the members of one family. For example, the Indian National Congress party, the Ram Vilas Sahab's party, all these parties, or the Lalu Prasad Yadav party, all these party, that is RJD, all these parties have only the family members at the top, and they give the tickets to their family members only when the election comes. Money and muscle power. Now this is very important. Previous, if you go few years back, this was the major thing which, or you can say, I should not use this, was nuisance in our politics. So since parties are focused only on winning elections, because that is what they want satta, they want the power, so they tend to use shortcuts in order to gain power or to win elections. They tend to nominate those candidates who have, or who can raise a lot of money. And rich people and companies who give funds to the party tend to have influence on the parties and decision on the party. So if say some parties there, and some Adanis and Ambanis have given, say, 1,000 or 10,000 crores to them. Now these parties, they will work for them, they will try to work for them, or they will be inclined, because the chanda or the funds given by these people or parties is too much. So, and those people who are fielded or given tickets, they are often very rich, and they are having muscle power, like the Bahubali, we call it, muscle power they have. So they have the chances to win the election by either hook or by crook. Why had the Indian government put barriers to foreign trade and foreign investment after independence? Analyze the reasons. So this question we have already done, and this is repeated. So the basic thing, I'll just go, this answer is somewhat different, So I just tried to give a different type of answer. For example, the removal of barriers. Once the independence we got, it was a good idea that, okay, bring the foreign good companies, bring the FDI, foreign direct investment, and make our economy better and make our market better. But the government did not think so, and the reason was correct. Why? Because the removal of barriers for foreign trade and foreign investment, see, barriers to foreign trade and foreign investment were partially removed. Why had the Indian government put barriers? And analyze the reasons. First is that goods could be improved and exported easily. Foreign companies could set up factories and office here. Opportunities for Indian producers to compete with producers around the globe. Now this is the answer which you need to give when it comes to, because we already covered a question like this. So this question is saying that when the government, you can say the barrier were somewhat released, you can say. So when they removed certain kind of barriers, but after independence, the basic reason was that our farmers and our industrialists, first of all, we don't have industrialists that much. So the farmers and industrialists, first of all, we wanted them to gain a momentum. We want our economy to gain momentum, to the farmers or the industrialists or the udyog to make certain stuff or goods for their country, so that the country may use and the economy is good. Then only we will allow the foreign people to come here. Otherwise, they will face unnecessary competition. And this answer you are going to give when there is the question being asked for partial removal of barrier and foreign trade and investment. So that is how, if you remove the barriers, this is the answer which we are going to add with the previous answers we discussed. Okay, if you remember, we already discussed this question. Explain the importance of conservation of minerals. Highlight any 3 measures to conserve them. Again, this question is repeated multiple number of times. So importance of conservation of minerals. First is, minerals or khanij are being rapidly consumed, which take millions of years to create or concentrate. Means if the mineral we are using, this has not come today. This is built, or this is being made or formed in years long back. The process has started, and it needs a proper temperature, pressure, condition, environment like this. And mineral resources are finite and non-renewable. That is, we know the matra, we know the say the amount. We know that this mineral is of this number of amount we have, and they are non-renewable. Non-renewable means once they are finished, the prakriti or the nature is not ready to renew its right now. Okay, it will take a million of years. Continued extraction of ores lead to the increasing cost, or as mineral extraction comes from greater depths along with the decreasing quality. So since we are actually using them or consuming them in a higher rate than the nature could produce these mineral, so we are going, first we were going like this, now we are going like this, so we are going deeper and deeper, and we are not getting that much of good quality minerals. So what are the way to or measures to conserve them? First is, it should be used in a planned sustainable manner. That is, right now we should need it for later time also, for our kids like this. And the good technology, so that all the low grade ores which we generally don't use, this should be bring to the market and use. Some of the metals are recyclables, we can recycle them. And scrap of metal, once metal is used, now the scrap, like the automobiles, etc., can be used and used for some other purpose, so it can be substitute for some other purpose. So what we said just now, to minimize the use of minerals which are likely to be depleted and exhausted, that we know that this is the amount and it is going to be depleted just sooner. Minimize the use of jewelry to conserve scarce minerals, and recycle and reuse minerals and glasses. Buy durable products that last long. Buy efficient vehicles. Repair and use bicycles. Use recyclable utensils. So these are the answers you can add, but you should stick to this. This is just an idea to give that what we have. The next question is, describe the popular struggle of Bolivia. Now, Bolivia is a country in South America. Here is the location. You must know where it is. So this is the place where in this South America, we have Bolivia. And this is the map of the Bolivia. And these are one of the picture of the Bolivian struggle. So this is called a popular struggle, and this took place in the city of Cochabamba. Where? Cochabamba. When the World Bank pressurized the government to give up its control of municipal water supply to the city, consequently the rights were sold to the multinational company, because the Bolivian government, it was in debt. It was in lot of debt. It has taken a lot of money from the World Bank. So World Bank said, okay, now you do what? You leave this municipal water supply, and give it to multinational companies, so that they can make money, we can make money. We can get some money from you, because you have taken a lot of debt from us, loan from us. So this MNC now, when it came, MNC, the main thing is to make profit. So the company immediately increased the price of water by 4 times, fourfold, which led to the monthly bill of rupees 1,000 in a country where the average income is just 5,000 rupees. Now 5,000 rupees someone is earning, and the bill he or she has to pay for water is 1,000. The situation was grim, and this was the starting of the protest. So this resulted in a popular protest, as we see here. An alliance of labor, everyone joined hand. Labor, human rights, community leaders, they organized a 4-day general strike. The government was ready to negotiate first, and the movement was called off, but nothing happened. No significant action was taken, and the strike began again in the month of February, and the police restored to brutal repression, means beating people. Strikes were followed again. It came in the month of April, and martial law, that is the army law, was imposed. Now the power of the people eventually forced the officials of the MNC to run out of the city of Cochabamba, and made the government agree to all the demands of the protesters. Therefore, the protest of these people, they bore fruit, and contract with the MNC were scrapped, or you can say cancelled, and the water supply was restored to the old municipality rates. Political parties are necessary condition for a democracy. Analyze the statement with examples. See, the political parties, as I suggested earlier, also in the previous question, like the BJPs, like the Indian National Congress, like all these. So these parties are necessary condition for a democracy. Without political parties, the democracies could not exist, cannot exist. If we do not have a political party, in such a situation, every candidate in election will be independent, right? Like जिसे हम कहते हैं कि it's independent, स्वतंत्र, स्वतंत्र, everyone will be स्वतंत्र and independent. So there will be no policy, there will be no vichardhara, there will be no, you can say, the manifesto of a collective people. So no one will be able to make any promises to the people about any major policy changes. So the government may be formed, but its unity will remain uncertain because everyone will be independent. So elected representative will be accountable to their constituency for what do they in their locality, but no one will be responsible for how the country will run. Because ultimately the country, whatever small pockets we are talking about, like the, say, a Vidhayak region or a corporator region, actually we are talking about a country. So the role of opposition party in democracy necessitates the existence of political parties. And as society become large and complex, they also need some agencies to gather different views on different issues and to present these to the government. That is why political parties are needed. And the problem of bad politics can be solved by more and more better politics. Describe the impact of globalization on Indian economy with examples. Now this question will come again and again. We have already seen this has come and this will come again. Why? Because this is repeated again and again. So the globalization has impacted Indian economy. First of all, the increase in the foreign investment, that is the foreign investment, companies are coming here and they are investing here. Over the past 20 years, the foreign investment has increased, and the emergence of Indian companies as multinational, several of the top companies, Indian companies like the Tata Motors, Infosys, Ranbaxy, they have been able to get benefit from the increased competition created as a result of the globalization and the creation of new opportunities. Globalization has created new opportunities for Indian companies, particularly the service provided company or these companies which are providing services, for example, IT, and the creation of new jobs for those who are in the era of globalization. This has created new jobs for people of the country and has helped in reducing the unemployment, berozgari rate to a certain extent. A host of services like the data entry, accounting, administrative tasks, engineering are now being done cheaply in India. So if you want to have a figure, kindly make a figure that will give an impact to the examiner. That is increased trade, greater choices of goods, greater competition because of the lower prices, economies of scale, that is more efficient production, and increased capital and labor mobility. Then tax avoidance. These are some things, you can say, in the darker or shady side. What does it mean? It means these are the drawbacks, that tax avoidance is easier now. Structural employment for shifting sectors is the major concern, and the monopoly power of multinational big companies. They have all the stake and they do whatever they decide because of the money and the power they have. Describe the process of unification of Italy, and this also has come many times. So first let me show you that this is the Italy part, right? Italy is a country in Europe, and this is how this has changed. This is the Kingdom of Sardinia. This was Kingdom of Sardinia, and this part is added to the Sardinia, and this now was added to Italy, and now this added to Italy means phase wise, 1858, then 1859-60, then 1866, 1870, and finally the Papal States. And this is the independence and unification of Italy. I'll show you, I'll tell you one by one. So this is state-wise. Northern Italy was captured from Austria. Then this is given to France in return for support of bid of independence. And this is the Kingdom of Sardinia, as I just showed you, independent before unification. And here we have Venice captured from Austria, 1866. 1870, Papal States conquered and these are also added to Italy. and this is the southern Italy captured from Spain 1860. So this is how it happened. I'll tell you one by one. The unification of Italy is the result of dedication, contribution and effort of three great leaders. First was Mazzini, then Cavour, then Garibaldi. So during 1830s, Giuseppe Mazzini had tried to unite Italy. He formed a secret society called as Young Italy. But both the uprising in 1831 and 1848 actually failed miserably. Even the ruling elites also wanted a unified Italy, which would offer economic advantages and also political dominance. So the unification of Italy was a result of many wars. Chief Minister Cavour, as I suggested here, made a tactful diplomatic alliance with France and Sardinian Piedmont, succeeding in defeating the Austrian forces in 1859, as I just suggested here. A large number of armed volunteers under the leadership of Giuseppe Garibaldi joined the unification movement. In 1860, they marched to the South Italy and Kingdom of Two Sicily, succeeded to drive out the Spanish ruler with the help of local people. In 1861, Victor Emmanuel II was proclaimed as King of United Italy. Describe the role of different religious groups in the development of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam. So Vietnam, we saw the one of the question there. So the role of religious groups in the development of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam region played an important role in strengthening the colonial control. It also provided ways of resistance in Vietnam. So Vietnam's religious belief were a mixture of Buddhism, also Confucianism, and local practices also. So Christianity introduced was by French missionaries, and many religious movements were hostile to the Western presence. The revolt was led by officials at the imperial court, angered by the spread of Catholic Church and French power. The French crushed the movement, but uprising served to inspire others. Then came the Scholar Revolt, followed by How Hoa movement. There is one more way to answer this. If you want this, you can also answer like this: that the French introduced Christianity in Vietnam because they wanted some dominance, and they encouraged conversions. This was seen as an interference in the religious belief of the Vietnamese, and they helped to unite them again a common cause and instilled a sense of nationalism, Rashtravad. Popular uprising, as I just said took place in Guan and Hai Thien provinces, and thousands of Catholics were killed. Now the Hoa Hao movement, founded by the Hyun Phu So, was an anti-colonial religious movement, and the religious movement strengthened the anti-imperialistic struggle and united the people against the colonialists or colonists. So this is question number 21, and this we are going to take in the next discussion. Till then, thank you so much. Take care of yourself.